Okay, I'd like to call the Personnel Subcommittee meeting and a Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Member Capola.
Present.
Member Gately. Present. Member Magnolia.
Present.
Okay, on the agenda, the first thing on the agenda is requests to add new positions, the first one being Chief Academic Officer. Dr. Alvarez?
Thank you. Thank you, Member Coppola. So the Chief Academic Officer position is a member of the executive leadership team. In very large school districts, and actually if you look at I put more than 17,000 students, but in your packet and the very first page, our current enrollment is 17,895 students. And so this is just a really comprehensive way of turning a current position that we have, which is the Curriculum and Instruction Executive Director position, into a position that also absorbs multilingual language learners. In the past, it's been a completely separate department, and that does not provide the coherence and the cohesion that we need to have in academics. Additionally, if you look at the position summary, it does report to me directly, and it has the task of working with Mass DESE as well for the 14 schools that have been identified under the Targeted Assistance grant at this time. We have been given a preliminary number as to the amount that we'll get for support for those 14 schools. However, we still have to provide a narrative, and we'll be asking for additional assistance due to the fact that, again, we have 14 schools. I do want to share with you at this time the names of our schools, because we have not actually named them in any of our meetings, and I think it's important to understand the scope of this work. We have Druitt's Elementary, Breed Middle School, Classical High School, Cobbett Elementary, Harrington, Fecto, Hood, Ingalls, Lynn English, Pickering, Ford, Thurgood Marshall, Washington, and Connery. All of those schools have areas that have been identified and disaggregated by our data team with the actual targeted focus support for the student groups. Some of them obviously have students that are underperforming in larger numbers than others. However, again, this position is really to address academic policies. I know that there was a review of but I've spoken to Charlie Gallo, and he's communicating with Dorothy Presser. We're going to pull some committees together to actually do some in-depth work of that section. Some of those policies are notated 1975. I'm sure you're familiar with them. We really need to have a comprehensive academic policy section and procedures that correspond with it. That's really the full implementation and scope of this position. And as you see in the requirements, it does require someone that's highly experienced in terms of leadership skills, principal background. And I am not going to read every single section of the successful candidate portion. But a lot of this will also include, like, what are the programming needs that we're going to vision out for our students in our different elementary, middle, and high schools to be able to support and sustain the actual student achievement growth that we anticipate once we are able to remediate the populations through the TAG grant. So in this document, I do want to address the state average spending by district. This was something that was referenced back in one of the meetings, I believe in May, and when we were talking about administrator to student cost. And so if you look at what the state average has published under administration for Lynn, in funding year 22, it was $513. The state average at that time was $664. Kevin McHugh went ahead and looked at our current numbers because they have not updated the list on the website. And so we're looking at a total of 17,000, as I said, 895 students based on the funding year 23 enrollment, which would have been a cost of $638. And so at the state average, that was still $26 under per student. And if you have any financial questions, Kevin is here to answer them.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understood the first part of what you're saying. So the executive director of curriculum, which is currently an unfilled position, is going to be folded into this. So we're not hiring a net new administrator. We're just shifting funding and doing a CAO rather than that executive director with different duties.
Correct.
Okay. The next question I have is, because the position summary has implementation of the targeted assistant grant, I didn't find under education and knowledge grant administration anywhere. And I didn't know, based on, these are all, like K through 12 are all new grants for me. And I understand at my level that grants experience is really crucial to being able to successfully report, because you lose money if you don't report well.
Sure.
If it is essential that the person brings in grants knowledge, and if so, if we could add that to education and knowledge, just a bullet point that says experience with grants administration.
Sure. We do have a team of a grants team.
Yeah.
And, you know, a very skilled business office department. But absolutely, I don't have any objection to that.
I think that that's a particular kind of skill set when you're talking about a position that's at this level. Overseeing grants at this level means understanding how it is you need to shape implementation so that the narrative will reflect what the grant needs in terms of its reporting structure. So even though you can have a really skilled grants team, a lot of times the implementation makes their job easier or harder, depending on how much the person doing the administration knows about grants.
Sure. Agree.
Yeah, thank you. So, Mary, did you get that bullet? So under education and knowledge, a bullet would just say experience in grants administration. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Gately?
Going back to what Member Magnolia just said, we do have a grants and innovation person, executive. Would they be working with this person?
Yes, and under requirements, one of those bullets is supporting superintendent developing leaders and also working with the executive director of the DEI, data assessment and accountability, and grant innovation and grants.
Okay. The other thing that is concerning to me is that this position, I've received 2 emails about it already, so I just want to clarify it again. Sure. About this is not a brand new position. This is a position that will be rolled in. Some more information is rolled into it for them to do more duties into what would have been the executive director of curriculum, correct?
Correct. That position will no longer exist.
And
curriculum and instruction.
And the salary base of 165 is what that executive director of curriculum? No? Where do we come up with the salary?
So the salary is actually very modestly competitive as to what other chief academic officers make for urban districts with this size.
Okay. All right.
Just to ask a question then. How much was the executive director of curriculum, Mr. McHugh?
Actually, I don't have that exact figure in front of me, but I think it's, what was that?
150.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
156 or 150?
yeah, one,
I want
yeah,
to say it was 156,
Yeah.
825.
right.
156, 825. I believe.
825,
Mhm.
okay. And so if there's a difference of 10,000, and we've already passed our budget, where will we be getting that?
It would come from any of the salary savings that we're doing, because right now, every week, we're saving money of positions that are unfilled. So we started off the year with 91 jobs, and then the next week, it was down to 81. And I think it's, I'm not sure, I haven't seen, it's probably in the 70s now. So every week, we're having some salary savings, so it'll just come out of those.
Additionally, we are looking at all of our administrative non-union positions to identify which positions we want to fill and which ones we will not be filling this year. And Kevin and I have identified at least one at this time that will not be filled.
That's an administrative job?
Correct,
Okay.
non-union position.
Mhm.
Can I continue now?
I'm sorry,
It's
I didn't
okay,
mean
you
to
just
cut you
jumped
off.
the gun,
I'm
Mrs.
sorry, Ms.
Coppola.
Gately.
Excuse me. All right, so there would be a $10,000 difference in this position. That's one thing that they were asking me about. And the other thing that concerns a lot of the teachers and staff, the emails that I received today was only two, is that teaching positions will not ever be cut, correct? We need our teachers. We will never, ever jeopardize any teachers in buildings over administrators.
These positions do not supplant teacher needs in our buildings.
Okay, and how about the future? They're very worried about the future.
Yeah, what I will address is that I know that there are other districts in Massachusetts that have experienced some reduction in force, and it's been very drastic, right? One in particular, they were at an $18 million deficit and reduced about 130 certified teachers. How you get to that point, I think there was a lot, and Kevin maybe knows more about this, could have been ESSER 3 and a lot of spending. We are nowhere near, obviously, based on, if you look at this sheet, they're one of the district right underneath ours. You can see, right, they were spending double on administrators. And their enrollment was actually somewhere in the 14,000s this past year. So with significantly less students and doubling the amount of staff, they ran into some extraordinary problems. But absolutely, we would never supplant funds that are designated to have per pupil teacher ratios for administrators.
And could we provide this to the union president?
I have.
Oh, okay,
She has a copy of this.
good.
I'm sorry, here I go again.
I think I'm done now, Mrs. Coppola.
Mr. Dugan?
Thank you, and thanks for having me. I know I'm not part of this committee, but I appreciate it. Kevin, to you, the $10,000, could you explain the positions, are those teaching positions that aren't filled right now that you're getting that money from?
Majority of them are.
Okay.
And as we keep continuing to fill those jobs.
Right.
Like the first week of school, like I said, there were, 81 jobs that were not filled. So, you times 81 by, you take the average salary, divide it out, each week you're saving money.
Okay.
And then the next week, it's kind of been now, it's down under, like in the 70s, so we're still filling. The goal is to fill all those jobs this year. But in essence, there is some savings by not filling each week. You don't pay someone, we're putting that money, holding on to it.
Right. So I guess, should we get to full capacity? Do we need to be concerned about this $10,000 at that point?
No, because we've already saved over $10,000.
Okay.
We've already
All right.
saved over $10,000.
So the money- okay, gotcha.
The money we've
All
already
right.
saved is well over $10,000
Okay.
at this point, so.
Gotcha, thank you.
And we've had a number of unfilled administrative positions, which, over time, over the last couple of weeks, even if they've been staffed recently, they were sitting empty for a month, 2 months, 3 months, so.
Okay.
Business Gately.
And I just want to go back to address that point, that $10,000. There is someone you have in mind, or not someone, but a position, an administrative position that you have in mind that's a non-union that may not be filled. So that could cover this.
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that the costs are there. All right, thank you. Do you want me to take the gavel and you ask?
No, I asked my question. Any other questions? Yes.
So I'd like to move the position of the chief academic officer to the full committee
And I'll second that.
With changes.
with changes, yeah, as amended.
Roll call, please.
Member Capola?
Yes.
Member Gately?
Yes.
Member Magnolia?
Yes.
Motion, oh, no, we got something else on the agenda.
More things.
Okay, the next thing is supervisor of attendance, interviews, discussion.
So we have a position that was scheduled to be interviewed, I believe, October 26th, and we are looking for some dates to reschedule that. We are still following the process as required. This is a position of the school committee. And Kim, do you have anything you want to elaborate on in terms of this position?
Could
Yes, Ms. Gately.
I asked for this to be put on the agenda for a specific reason, because the first time it went to a interview committee and then recommendations were made. The second time, I don't think it was necessary. I think there were only two, so it just came to the full committee. So I wanted to make it a committee decision, a personnel subcommittee decision on what it is we want to do with that. So that's why I brought it forward. Do we want it to come before the whole committee, all of the applicants, or do we want to go ahead with having a subcommittee and then recommending two from that subcommittee? Because it is the school committee's vote.
Can I speak to what we've historically done? So with both supervisor of attendance positions and with the administrator for special ed, they are school committee picks. What we have done is formed a committee. School committee members, whoever from the school committee wants to sit on that committee, has sat on that committee. And then that committee makes a recommendation to Dr. Alvarez. Dr. Alvarez then makes a recommendation in the committee of the whole to the committee, just as we did with Dr. DeToya.
So that's why I brought it forward, to see if anybody, which way anyone wanted to go on it.
Anybody have an opinion, or should we just move it to the full committee for a vote? You know, if nobody, you know, if the four of us sitting here, if we don't have an opinion on it.
Well, I remember that when we dealt with this in the policy committee, right? The acting, now I'm going to look at Eric to see if I'm remembering this correctly, that there was no requirement that it go before the full committee except for the appointment part, that it
Yes,
was
correct.
nebulous up until the appointment part with these positions.
And then it's your decision.
Right. It's
Yes.
a recommendation from the superintendent to the committee, and the committee then votes to either
Okay.
approve or not approve.
Yeah, so my inclination is to let the subcommittee handle that, mostly because having spent a lot of time on hiring committees, the minutia of somebody's CV, of their experience, of all of that, there's just no way, if you haven't delved into that, you have a sense of the candidate, which, you know, I remember from hiring Dr. Alvarez, took a lot of time to pour into, and so I think if folks are okay with serving on that subcommittee, they're going to give that time and attention to that in a way that, as a member of the full committee, I don't feel like my full attention would be on that. So that's my inclination. It's a lot of due diligence to feel like you're making an informed decision about someone's candidacy.
You remember the policy, was that rewritten, or had we had just accepted the policy that was there?
I believe that's one that was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we wrote that one. No, that was there. Yeah.
So, we'll follow the policy as is, so there'll be no vote here. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I believe the policy is pretty clear. I mean, I think if it was a position that this committee felt very strongly about the entire committee of the whole dealing with, we could ask for a special exception. I don't think in this case there's any specific reason to, unless Member Gately feels like there's a specific reason to. But again, it just goes back to the professional qualifications and the folks who are serving on the actual interview committee. I wouldn't know what makes somebody a supervisor of attendance a better or a worse candidate, so I wouldn't volunteer for that committee. Curriculum would be a different story, right? That's what I mean.
In the past, the last time, it was a huge, the superintendent made a recommendation, and we did not agree with her recommendation
2 times ago, yeah, with Kristen.
2 times ago. So,
But it was still a committee, as we've established this time, and it was in the committee of the whole that there was a disagreement.
Yes.
Correct, Lorraine?
so sometimes you can not agree with the recommendation.
Oh, absolutely. That's our right as school
Absolutely.
committee
Within
members. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't see the role of the subcommittee, though, like meaning the interview subcommittee versus the committee of the whole kind of doing that last bit. I don't think that would change that. You could still not be in agreement with everyone.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Roll call, please.
Member Capola?
Yes.
Member Gately?
Yes.
Member Magnolia?
Yes. Mary will be very mad at you. She will have nothing to put it in on Thursday. If he takes the folder.
I almost took the folder.
Eric's already done that.
I already did it once. I only made the mistake once.
Eric has a
I
couple.
did it once too.
Won't do it again.
It's okay, it happens.
Ryan's probably done it a few times.
Yeah.